Hey guys, Zomfox here, and today it is time to do the Week 2 United Football League Power Rankings. Week 1 was crazy. We saw two massive upsets to a lot of people, as well as another game that, depending on who you actually thought was the favorite, was an upset. And overall, just a crazy week. Every game was close in the fourth quarter. We saw a lot of teams just struggle in areas we didn't expect them to, and some that were exactly as predicted. So there's a lot that has to change on the power rankings, and most people would agree that spots 2 through 7 are very much up for debate. Now, yes, there's certain teams that are very clearly on the bottom half and top half of that, but that whole area is very much open for interpretation. Now, the number 1 spot and, of course, the number 8 spot, most people agree with the two teams that are going to go to those two spots because, well, one of them has pretty clearly been the worst team heading into the season and then proved that, and the other team we expect to be great and, well, won in week 1. So without further ado, let's get right on into this with number 8, the Houston Roughnecks. The Houston Roughnecks come in at number 8, and this really shouldn't be a shock. Look, the three teams that were basically unanimously viewed as the bottom 3 teams in the league were the Panthers, Brahmas, and Roughnecks, and the Panthers and Brahmas both got the W this weekend. The Roughnecks did not, so number 8 is where they have to go. Look, I was hoping they wouldn't look as bad as they did last year without Mark Thompson because they had that experience. No, they looked pretty bad without Mark Thompson. In fact, this was basically a carbon copy of the 2022 Houston Gamblers. In the fact that they were basically carried by high-end defensive performances, and that was the only reason the score was kind of close. Look, at no point in this game did the Roughnecks look like the better team. It was very much that they had a couple great defensive players step up and be insanely good. Look, they got obliterated in the time possession. They had almost 20 minutes less of possession time than the Memphis Showboats did. And then overall, while their defense was solid in the TFLs especially, the fact is that the few TFLs the Showboats got were more impactful, and the Showboats got more sacks despite the fact the Roughnecks were supposed to be the team with the insanely good defensive line. Now, the other thing is that while Garantano's stats aren't terrible, and just a quick side note, the passer rating shown on the official stats on the overall Game Center page is the college rating. So just note that if you're seeing it like with the Garantano stats right here where it says rating, 139, that's his college stat, his NFL passer rating would be 96.7. Just want to clarify that. But even though his stats aren't terrible, Garantano did not look good at all during this game. And what looked even worse was the rushing attack. Look, we heard people say that guys like TJ Pledger would be really solid. And even I said that, they wouldn't be terrible, but the fact is that they're not Mark Thompson. Look, there was basically only 2 teams, realistically, that actually played good at the running back position this week. The Roughnecks were not one of them. Look, the fact is the Roughnecks only put up 12 points, and while yes, one of the Showboats' touchdowns was off a fumble recovery, the fact is that the Showboats are a team that is still gelling. This is an offense that has to actually start gelling together, and they were able to get the W on the Roughnecks, which is a big deal. Look, the Roughnecks were the only team that had less than 200 yards gained on offense in week 1. That's horrid. Less than 200 yards is terrible. They easily come in at number 8. I know some people say, well, would they get Mark Thompson back? They'll be better. I don't know if they're going to be that much better. Look, Thompson is a huge impact player, and we'll see for sure how much impact he has, and we'll also see if Garantano ends up starting next week. All I know is at the moment, the Roughnecks are the worst team in the league. They're going to have to win a game to not be the worst team in the league. And considering they play the DC Defenders, they have a good shot to move up in the power rankings by a little bit. But as of now, they're number 8. But their week 1 MVP was obviously Reuben Foster. Look, Toby Johnson had a very strong case himself, but Reuben Foster had the interception and the fumble recovery that essentially kept them in this game. Without that interception and fumble recovery, the Showboats probably easily win this game. Look, the Showboats had a couple of field goals that didn't even count because that didn't go through the uprights, but Reuben Foster was the reason that the Roughnecks were able to get the ball back a lot of times, and in the end, it didn't matter. Look, this was very much like a Chris Odom performance, what he and Toby Johnson did together. But just like a lot of those Chris Odom performances in 2022, it just wasn't enough. Now, yes, Chris Odom also is injured. We don't know for sure if he'll be back. Hopefully, he's back this week. But the fact is, this was a great performance by Reuben Foster. He was one of the many former Pittsburgh Maulers to just play incredible this week. But he is the Week 1 MVP for this team. He was incredible. Nobody in the offense really deserved it. So, yes, really solid performance, but the Roughnecks come in at number 8, and that shouldn't be a shock to anybody. Now, coming in at number 7 is the team the Roughnecks are playing in the DC Defenders. Yeah, the Defenders come in at number 7. Look, the Defenders really did not... I wouldn't even say that. The Defenders are really hard to judge. Look, the fact is of all the losses we saw this week, this is probably the one I would say looked the best. Now, yes, the final score is pretty bad. It's a 15-point final score. But I'll talk about it especially a lot more at the Brahmas side of this. The defenders really kept this a lot closer than that, and you could very much argue they were the better team than the Brahmas. One of the touchdowns the Brahmas had was a insanely fluky play, the Brad Wing to Alex Millette pass right at halftime. Multiple TDs got called back due to penalties. The fact is, this very well could have been a defender's win. So, why are they dropping to 7? Well, the reason is their defense. I was very unimpressed by their defense. They let Chase Garbers look like one of the best quarterbacks this week. I mean, again, Garbers may not have had the flashiest yards total, but 19 to 25 is a really solid completion percentage, 76, and 2 TDs and no picks. The fact that they let Garbers look good is scary. Look, the offense we expected to take a step back without Abram Smith, and Te'amu looked fantastic when you consider the fact that he had very limited receiver help, or not even that, just his offensive line really failed him, especially in crucial moments with penalties, and his running game was terrible. I mean, Cameron Harris, who some people expect to be really solid, 21 yards at 8 attempts is horrid. But the fact is the defense scares me. I did not think their defense was going to be this bad. The fact is their offense is what really kept them in this game for a lot of it. It's just that, again, penalties ended up screwing them over. And that's the fact that the defenders really could have won this game and, in fact, should have probably won this game. But because of those terrible penalties and the Brahmas not doing what they would have done last year, which what they did this year was not falter when given opportunities to win. They took the opportunities and ran with it, hence why they won by 15. It wasn't a strong victory by the Brahmas despite the final score, but again, the Brahmas offense looked a lot better than everybody expected it to, and a huge reason for that is the DC Defenders' defense not being nearly as good as we expected. So, because of those two things, I'm putting them at 7. Yes, there's a very good argument they should be at 6 above the team I have at 6 because of the fact their loss looked really good, in a sense. But at the same time, it's kind of hard to judge after week 1 exactly how good the Brahmas are or how good the Michigan Panthers are. Hint, hint, to who the next spot is. But for now, they're going to go at 7. I have a lot of faith in Te'amu, but if you don't really have the O-line or the receiver around, or the running back around him, there's only so much he can do, and that defense really underachieved this week. Maybe it'll come back better next week against the Roughnecks, which, man, that game is going to be wild, especially if Mark Thompson ends up missing that game as well. That's going to be pretty wild in terms of two teams that are missing their most important offensive player, but yeah. Now, who is their MVP for week 1? I'm going with Matt McCrane. Yeah, I know that I believe his name is Malik Fisher is the one that had a really solid game for them as well, but I'm giving it to Matt McCrane. The fact is he was the most consistent player on the team for basically arguably the most consistent player. The fact is he had 4 field goals, a 50 and a 48-yarder, and he made them both, as well as making the 2 closer to chip shot field goals. Fact is, that's incredible. We saw multiple kickers miss, and even though the kicking this week was honestly pretty good compared to what we've seen in spring football in the past, Matt McCrane going 4 for 4 was a really solid showing. That was really good, and that does give hope to the defenders and their fan base, because that shows that when you do need kicks, he can make them, especially because these were clutch kicks. These kicks all really mattered when he did it, and even though some of them were in that sense of, oh my god, they couldn't get a touchdown, he was still able to make them, and that's a big deal. So I think he does deserve the week 1 MVP for them. A really important player for them and was very consistent. So I know Fisher has a good argument for it, but I'm going to go with Matt McCrane. Now coming in at number 6 is going to be the St. Louis Battlehawks. The Battlehawks very well could be argued to go down even farther. But I'm going to not do that. I think they deserve 6th. I think they deserve to be ahead of the Defenders, but the fact is that this loss looks a lot worse than what a lot of people are saying. Look, a lot of people are acting like this loss is not a big deal, that, the Battlehawks should still arguably be above the Panthers. I've seen multiple people actually suggest that they should be above the Panthers after week 1. Number 1, your team did not look good in this win, okay? Your offense in the first half looked atrocious. Well, let me rephrase that. The Panthers' offense looked atrocious in the first half. The Battlehawks' offense just looked fully outclassed. I said in the Game Picks video that I expected the Panthers to lose this game in a close game because their offense couldn't compete with the St. Louis defense, as well as the St. Louis offense could compete with the Michigan Panthers defense. It ended up being the opposite. Look, heading into this, we expected the tight end room to be a weakness. It really wasn't that bad. I did suggest the running back room could be a weakness. It was horrid. Wayne Gallman did not look good in this game. He looked very mediocre. 3.1 average on 13 carries was very mediocre. But the offensive line, oh my god. Look, it may have only been 3.5 sacks technically the Panthers got, but everybody knows that basically every other play, McCarron was getting pressured by somebody. Nakua, Speaks, somebody else. the O-line just played horridly. So that might be an issue for Gallman and why he didn't play that good, which we'll see if it continues. But again, the fact is that they looked really, really exploitable. Now, the thing with the defense as well, the Panthers scored all their points in the second half because they realized that they had Wes Hills, and they started that in the second quarter. And when they started utilizing him, the St. Louis defense really couldn't stop him. Wes Hills was arguably the best running back this week, and as a pure runner, he was the best running back this week. And a lot of that is because the St. Louis defense could not stop him. Look, E.J. Perry played really bad overall, but he had a couple good runs for touchdowns. The fact is that the defense for the Battlehawks didn't look great, but they still looked better than the DC defense. Essentially, it showed they had a weakness at the very least, and that's running the ball. If teams run the ball, they can beat them. And another thing is that the Battlehawks, one of their touchdowns only really happened because of a face mask penalty. Now, yes, it would have been like a 4th and 1. They could have very well gone for it and succeeded. They could have kicked a very long field goal and gotten it. The fact is that that first touchdown in the fourth quarter the Battlehawks got wasn't necessarily because they earned it. It was because the Panthers got a penalty. Much like that Pittsburgh Maulers game last year where the Panthers got a very inopportune penalty at the end. And the other reason why this team is low here, and arguably should be 7, is because Anthony Beck made a very, very dumb decision to go for 1 point. The thing is with the 1 point decision when it was like tied at 15-15, the issue with going for 1 versus 3, if you get the 1 point conversion, the Panthers now have to kick a field goal. If you go for 3, you fail it, it's a tie game. The Panthers don't have to go for the field goal. They don't have to go all out. There's less than a minute left. The Panthers don't have timeouts. So if they get into that 3rd and long situation, instead of doing a play designed to allow them to get a first down on this or the next play, they're instead going to do a much safer play, run out the clock and get to OT. Going for 1 to secure a lead is not a good idea. Because if you fail the 3-point conversion, the Panthers are not going to go fully hard to get the field goal. They'll be okay taking the tie and going to overtime. Their offense, aside from the 1 interception, had proven to be really good at those short yardage plays at the red zone. So what it said to me was Beck does not have a lot of faith in the offense, which did show he had a lot of issues with McCarron. McCarron was very not happy about him losing the ball at certain times where they decided to do a run play or a quick screen type of thing instead of letting McCarron do what he wanted. The fact is that was a terrible coaching decision. It really was. Look, you're not even guaranteed to get the 1 point conversion, so the fact that you decided to go for that instead of the 3 point makes no sense. You go for the 3 point conversion, there's no way you lose unless you allow a deep shot touchdown. So then you can play prevent defense, which, is like the biggest sin in football, but people still do it, and you can be okay allowing a field goal. Instead, you do the 1 point, the Panthers now have to kick a field goal, and you're relying on them missing. That's what Beck did. Instead of believing in his team to win the game, he said, I'm going to believe that Jake Bates will miss the kick because he hasn't kicked since high school, and it ended up being the reason they lost. They got gifted a couple turnovers. Granted, one of them was at the red zone for the Panthers, so the Battlehawks would have had to go like 95 yards to score a touchdown. But they won the turnover battle. The Michigan offense played horrid the first half, aside from when they used West Hills at the late second quarter, and still couldn't win. Because they were able to keep this a lot closer, though, in a sense that there were things that I did like. I liked how they were able to hold E.J. Perry's passing, which, yes, part of that was Perry not playing good, but some of it was the Battlehawks defense doing a really good job on him, versus the DC defense, which overall I'm very skeptical on. The Battlehawks defense, I just think, is exploitable. Now, the offense, we'll see. They have a very big test against the Renegades, but I'm going to put the Battlehawks at 6 for now. I'm seeing people put them at 4 and 3. No, they're not that high until they can prove their offense is actually as good as we expected, because their offense looked putrid for the first half of that game. We'll see. Battlehawks number 6. Now, the MVP for them was Marcel Aitman. Aitman made a couple really big plays and catches near the end of the game, including a touchdown. He had a 25-yard long reception and 6 total receptions. He was balling out at the end of the game, and he was a huge reason why the Battlehawks were able to take the lead. Aside from the penalty, this was the guy that really got him in there. He was incredible in that game, especially in the second half when they needed him most. So because of that, I gave him MVP. Yes, there are other guys you could have made a case for, but I think that all in all, Aitman was the most clutch player for them at the receiver position. And I think that overall, he was a huge reason why they were still in the game. So I gave it to Marcel Aitman as the team MVP. Now, coming in at number 5 is going to be the Arlington Renegades. I'm seeing so many people put them at 7, and I mentioned this on X. I don't understand why. Essentially, people used arguments like, oh, we underestimated Michigan. Oh, we just, were a bit overzealous on DC as reasons to put them higher than the Renegades, but then just forget the fact the Renegades actually played the best team in the league. Look, their loss to the Stallions is the one that's up there with DC's loss as the best looking loss. Yes, again, it was by 13 points. But the fact is, this game was very close. At halftime, it was 11-11. Okay, this was a very close game. Now, after halftime, the Stallions were able to get ahead. And the whole reason they were able to get ahead and get to that halftime is because that insanely ballsy deep shot with 9 seconds left that ended up working for the Stallions. It caught the Renegades off guard. They got the touchdown and were able to tie the game up. The fact is, they kept this close for a while. And the Stallions are the best team in spring football. So losing to them does say something. Yes, even though the Battlehawks lost by a last-second field goal, they were playing an inferior team. Now, we'll see for sure who's the best team when the Stallions play the Panthers this weekend, but I'd assume most of us are in agreement that we expect the Stallions to win that game. But the fact is, the Battlehawks barely lost, but that barely loss was because of a penalty that bailed them out and got them a touchdown, and because of some pretty horrid play by the Panthers offense. Whereas the Renegades, they kept this game close for a while. We look back now and people are saying how great Matt Corral played. Matt Corral, until that touchdown to Deion Kane, really looked terrible. The Renegades defense were able to hold him off. But the one issue is that their running game wasn't the best. Now, Letty Brown still technically was one of the best running backs this week. A 3.8 average was actually one of the best this week. Luis Perez did have the one interception late in the game, but aside from that interception, he was also really good. So, there's a lot to look forward to with this Renegades team. I think that they will probably go into St. Louis and get the W. I do think that. I think that a lot of people are overreacting to the Renegades because this was the first game that happened. So they're kind of forgetting just how close a game they had this and just how bad they made really both Martinez and Corral look. Granted, Martinez looked incredible running the ball, but passing he did not look good. The Renegades DBs were able to hold off really well until that deep shot. The fact is the Renegades played the best team in the league and were able to keep it close for a while. I think that says a lot more about how good the Renegades can be versus a team like the Battlehawks who were able to keep it close mainly because of incompetence by the other team's offense for a lot of it. And I don't think there's as many questions with the Renegades as are with the Battlehawks. Like I said before, the Renegades are very much a gatekeeper team. If you beat them, you're probably a contender. If you lose to them, you're probably going to miss the playoffs. I still believe that. I think this Renegades team is very much an average team overall. I did not see anything that made me think, oh, this team is really weak at X spot. Because, again, they kept it close for a while. I think the Renegades deserve number 5, and people are really overreacting. Now, I will say their MVP for Week 1 is going to be Vic Beasley. Again, this is really close. A lot of players were just good, really solid. But I'm going to give it to Vic. He had the team's only sack in TFL, if I'm not mistaken. And I think that was enough. Look, he had 4 total tackles, but he had the sack in TFL. Again, there wasn't really anyone in the Renegades who was unbelievably good. I know Deontay Burnett had a really good case for it. He had a really solid outing himself. Sal Cannella was pretty solid again, quietly. But I'm going to give it to Vic Beasley. I think that overall he had a huge impact on the defense and was a huge reason why the defense were able to look so good for a while. So I'm going to give it to Vic Beasley. I know some people might disagree with this one, which, again, I could see Burnett being the argument for that one, but I'm going to put it as Vic Beasley. Now, coming in at number 4 is going to be the Michigan Panthers. I was debating on putting the Renegades above the Panthers just because I need to see another week, but I'm going to give the Panthers the benefit of the doubt and put them at 4. Look, the Michigan Panthers, I think, are the weakest team that won this week, and I think that this is pretty much an agreement. Because, again, while they did show to me that they are better than the Battlehawks, they overall played a much better game than the Battlehawks. There were a lot of weaknesses that were shown on this team, primarily that E.J. Perry did not look too good. A 50 completion percentage with 2 interceptions. Yes, one of them was pretty crazy, but still 2 interceptions. That's not good. Look, his yards being over 10 yards per completion is solid, but the fact is, overall, this team just wasn't the best. Now, yes, the red zone offense looked really solid. If aside from the 1 interception in the red zone, the team was perfect. Now, they didn't win the time possession battle, but what they did do was they pressured a lot on A.J. McCarron, and they were really solid in that realm. Now, the best thing for them is that they had the best rushing performance with Wes Hills' 11 attempts for 85 yards. Yes, that was helped by the 24-yard long, but even without that, he still was easily one of the best running backs this week, arguably the best. There's really only one other guy that you can argue that for. So, yeah. Now, yes, the team did win with a horrid third down percentage, but granted, the Battlehawks' third down percentage was also horrid. 2 for 9 versus 5 of 15 are both pretty terrible. But the fact is that the Panthers were much better at actually getting the plays downfield, or consistently doing drives is the best way to put it. Because again, they had that one drive that ended because of an interception in the red zone. But overall, they were able to consistently get drives a bit better, and that was a reason why they were able to get downfield and get that play into Jake Bates getting his field goal. Yes, the Jake Bates field goal was incredible, a 64-yarder being made twice in a row thanks to the icing that ended up happening. But yes, the Panthers were the better team that day. I think that people saying the Battlehawks were better didn't really watch the game, because the Panthers' defense outclassed the Battlehawks' offense by a mile in the first half, and it took a penalty to help the Battlehawks get a touchdown. So the Panthers deserve this 4 spot, but the fact is they were very much the weakest team that won this week. Even though you could say they earned it more than a team like the Brahmas. The Brahmas, I look at them and I say there's a lot of pieces that I'm very impressed with. With the Panthers, it's West Hills is as good as we expected. Colburn was not as good as we expected or hoped. E.J. Perry was not as good as we expected. The defense was a bit better than expected. Whereas with the Brahmas, I'm like, yes, Chase Garbers looked a lot better than we thought he would. The receiving core looked a lot better than we thought they would. There's a lot of positives for the Brahmas, whereas the Panthers, it's like a couple positives, and that's basically it. So the Panthers coming at 4, I think is very much a deserving spot. Now, their MVP was obviously West Hills. I mean, come on, there's no argument. Look, West Hills is the reason this team was really in the game late, especially because that last second quarter drive they had that ended up, with the E.J. Perry interception and what they did in the fourth quarter was basically because of him. 85 yards rushing is the most in the league so far after week 1. A 7.7 yard per carry, even though he did have the 24-yard long, is still insane. Has to be West Hills. He was the most important player for them. He's the reason they were able to win that game. Yes, Jake Bates made the great kick, but West Hills is the one who really helped him get into position to win this game, whether it be by the long drives or the short stuff. He was the reason they were in it. Now, coming in at number 4 or number 3 is going to be the San Antonio Brahmas. Brahmas coming at number 3. I'm seeing some people put him at 1. Okay, hold your horses. They're not number 1. They are a lot better than we thought, though. Look, it was very much like the Battlehawks in a sense. A lot of people were starting to hate on them a lot more because of the fan base being so rabid. I actually got kind of hit with the benefit of the doubt, and I actually moved them up in my spots and quarterback because of all the Brahmas fans. But yeah, they looked really solid. Look, the fact is that 27-12 win, admittedly, was not really the best win. I think that the final score does not show how the Brahmas really weren't the better team. I think that the better team was actually DC. But like I said before, the Brahmas last year would not have taken advantage of the failures and mistakes DC made. This Brahmas team did. This Brahmas team did not choke. They were gifted a way to win the game, and they said, yep, we'll take it. Last year's team would not do it. So yes, people putting them at number 2 are kind of overrating them based on what they did this past week. Because again, they didn't really go out there and play better than DC. They just didn't make the mistakes DC did. And when you look at it, they had a lot of penalties, but they weren't as inopportune times. They had 270 yards. It was one of the highest totals in the league this week. Their rushing attack was one of the best. Anthony McFarland did have the 20-yard rush, which helped his average a lot. But again, he still was one of the better running backs this week. Chase Garbers looked a lot better than we expected him to. Was that because the DC defense is not as good as we thought? Or is he really good? John Trey Kirkland looks really great back from injury last year. But of course, they had that insane Brad Wing play that got him the touchdown in halftime. They were going to kick it with D. Schroing. He missed the kick before he got iced. Then they did the whole formation thing, and then he threw to his third read, center Alex Millette playing tight end, and it worked, which was crazy. Yes, this team won the game, but they were not as great as some people are saying. They deserve number 3. They are a lot better than we expected. 5 yards of play is really solid, but there is areas that are very scary. 1 of 8 on third down is horrific, okay? Like, that's even worse than 2 of 9. That's pretty bad. But 3 of 4 on fourth downs, that's a solid number. So you've got a bad, you've got a good. But the biggest reason why they're not number 2 is because their MVP was on the opposing team. Oh man, I'm going to love talking about this. Yes, the week 1 MVP for the Brahmas is Jean Delance, offensive lineman for the Defenders. There should not be any argument over this one. This dude balled out for the Brahmas. This dude was a menace. Look, in quarter 1, Teamu throws this awesome pass to Kiki Kuti, and it's a touchdown. Incredible. Penalty. Ineligible man downfield. Who was it? Delance. Penalty accepted. touchdown, didn't happen. Then in quarter 2, it gets even better, right? Tiamu steps back to pass, he throws an incompletion, and holding yard penalty. This one gets declined though, only because of the fact that it was already 2nd and 20. But if he had caught that ball and this had been called, that would have been hilarious. But then you get to the third quarter, and then you have penalty, Jean Delance on a 2nd and 10, false start. But then this is the coup de grace. This is one of the funniest moments. If you're a Brahmas fan, you were probably so ecstatic when this happened. I'm just going to read it off perfectly. Jordan Teamu pass short middle, complete San Antonio end zone. Catch made by Kiki Kuti again at the San Antonio end zone. It's a gain of 8 yards. Kiki Kuti for 8 yards, touchdown. San Antonio challenged the runner, broke the plane, and the play was overturned. Penalty on DC. Jean Delance, false start. 5 yards accepted, another touchdown overturned. But this is where it gets good. No play. Penalty on DC, Jean Delance. Personal foul, offense. 15 yards accepted, no play. That doesn't explain it better. After the touchdown happened, before it was challenged, before we saw the flag, Jean Delance spit on an opposing player, got his team a 15-yard penalty, and then got ejected. He was still starting because he is one of their best linemen. After he got ejected, Teamu was under even more duress and even more pressure because of the right tackle missing. He got ejected, get a 15-yard penalty that already would have been horrid for the defenders, but then was called with the false start on the review from Wade Phillips. Jean Delance carried the Brahmas this week. This dude was a menace. I mean, he really was. I would not be shocked if he were to get cut and the Brahmas sign him. Okay. Look, in all seriousness, I know some people are hoping he gets cut, and I would not be shocked if he does. He probably is going to stay in the roster because he was the starting right tackle for a reason, and they got even worse when he got ejected. But this was bad. He single-handedly cost the team 2 touchdowns. I know Kiki Kuti is really mad. But if it wasn't for Jean Delance, the defenders probably win this game. Delance was a godsend for the Brahmas. He was their number 1 player this week. So if you're a Brahmas fan, Chase Garbers, he was good. Jontre Kirkland was good. That pass by Brad Wing was incredible, but none of them are Jean Delance, who will go down in infamy for one of the worst performances an offensive lineman has had in spring football history. This was bad. Now, coming in at number 2 is going to be the Memphis Showboats. Yes, the Showboats, a lot of people are having them very low. Again, it's very evident that some people did not actually watch the USFL at all or did not pay attention at all. Because the Showboats, again, are a team that is filled with a bunch of great players that still have to gel. There's a reason why they didn't look all that great this week. They're still gelling. The fact that they got the win is incredible. First of all, yes, they had a very poor showing in terms of total yardage, but their defense was able to hold the Roughnecks, which, granted, a lot of it was because of bad quarterback in Jarrett Garantano and no running back in Mark Thompson, but they were still able to hold the team to under 200 yards, only 12 points by the Roughnecks, whereas the Showboats defense was able to get a touchdown from a fumble recovery, meaning that their defense was able to score basically half of what the Roughnecks offense could. And yes, even though one of the misses was with a penalty, so they got a first down out of it, still there were 2 misses by Matt Conklin. So, for the sake of argument, let's just say if he makes the kick, they decide to decline the penalty and keep the kick. That's 6 points the Showboats did not get because of missed field goals. I do not expect Conklin to miss this many field goals again. I would expect him to only miss one in the next couple weeks. Yes, the big question mark was that Darius Victor looked pretty bad. He did get hurt. From what we're understanding, he is probably going to be okay in play. And they are talking about using Trey Williams a lot more in the running game. They did not use him really at all, which was a big mistake in my opinion. So expect him to be there, and with Victor healthy, hopefully, and with Cookus, that should be a really good trio. Yes, Victor did not look all that great. Cookus did have the 1 interception late, but overall, again, looked very solid. Not great, not awesome, but very solid. But that's the thing. We saw flashes with Sage Surratt. We saw flashes with Jay Adams. Overall, the team looked really good. I'm seeing people put him at like 6. Look, people said I had him high last week because of how I viewed their upside. But the fact is they were able to get a W while still actually, learning to play with each other. That's a big deal in my opinion. This was a team that was very much we have to put them together, see what they do, let them gel. And they still got a W to start the season. This is huge. This is an extra week where they can have those growing pains and it not affect them. I think they deserve this spot. Look, 9 of 15 on third downs. That's a really good sign. Even though the team didn't necessarily light up the score sheet and all that, despite getting hit with 7 TFLs, despite getting hit with 3 sacks, when you're 9 of 15 on third down, that's a really good stat line. That's saying you're able to keep drives alive. That's how you have almost 40 minutes of time of possession. That's really good. If they can just get that running game better, if they can get that trio of Cookus, Victor, and Williams to work and start running, this team will be very scary. I think they deserve the number 2 spot. Because they won, I had them at 3. They move up to 2. I know a lot of people are going to say they should be lower. The fact is, this is a team that still has to gel, and even without them gelling, they were still able to get a win. Their defense looked a lot better than I expected, even though they were against a weak offense. They deserve the spot. Now, their team MVP, this is a tough one, but I'm going with Vinny Papele. The fact is, he had this incredible touchdown reception with this picture that you're seeing here. I don't really have to say anything else. That touchdown was huge. That was the one that basically ended the game, in a sense. It was an incredible pass, incredible catch. So, yeah, I'm giving him the team MVP. Just incredible touchdown reception. And he had 3 other receptions as well. So, yeah, I'm giving him MVP. The number 1, the Birmingham Stallions once again. Don't you love to see it? It's like no matter when I do a Power Rankings video, it's just they're always number 1. Because again, it's like nobody can beat them. Look, their total yards was over 400. Their offensive yards was 397. No other team had 300 yards of offense. They were 3 shy of 400. Yes, Renegades' loss was not as bad as everything looks. But the fact is, a lot of these yards happened thanks to that incredible last-second play in the first half, and a lot of it was in the second half. Matt Corral looked very, very shaky in the first half, but then looked really good in the second half. Adrian Martinez looked terrible throwing the ball, but looked incredible running the ball. I would not be shocked if they go with Jamar as the backup, though. Overall, I mean, what can I say? The Stallions were 8 of 12 on third down. Incredible. The Renegades were 6 of 11, which that's really good in itself. That's over 50%. But the Stallions were better. 5.5 yards per play was one of the best this week for the Renegades. The Stallions were better, 6.4. The Stallions' running game was one of the best this week. They had 183 yards. That was the best this whole week. Now, yes, a lot of that was Adrian Martinez having multiple insanely long runs, but both Maribel and Person really were solid. Person's 31 yards rushing and 3.1 average was unironically one of the better totals. And CJ Maribel is the other running back who was arguably the best because he also had some impact plays at receiver. And overall was really solid rushing the ball. He didn't have that long, 20-yard plus run, but an average of 3.7, that was really solid for this week. I mean, they're number 1. It's obvious. Now, their MVP, I'm going with CJ Maribel. Look, I know Mark Gilbert was really good. I know some people say Corral deserved it. CJ Maribel, from start to finish, was, I think, the most consistent player on the team, all in all. He had 2 receptions for 38 or 36 yards, which included 40 yards after catch, which is really solid. But, of course, his 67 yards on the ground, his touchdown, solid average. He was just the definition of consistency. I've said it last year or a while ago when I did the USFL GOAT video for the modern USFL, where I said he was a very sneaky case for the GOAT. I said he wasn't, but he had a very good case for it. He's been very underrated both seasons of the USFL because the first year, despite him being the number 1 running back, once Bo came and had those incredible, last few games, everybody kind of forgot about Maribel. And this past season, they also just kind of forgot about Maribel because of how incredible Magoo played. The fact is CJ Maribel is a really good running back and very much is becoming an elite running back. We'll see if he's able to keep it up, but there's a good case that he could honestly be the sneaky offensive player of the year winner. So we'll see. I'm putting him at the Week 1 MVP. And so that'll do it for this Power Rankings video, Week 2 Power Rankings. Let me know what you guys think down below. What are your rankings? Why do you have those rankings? Do you agree or disagree with mine? Like I said, I think that the bottom 2 teams between the Battlehawks and, well, not counting the Roughnecks, but the teams like the Defenders and Battlehawks, you could very much argue that they should be swapped around. I know a lot of people really are high in the Brahmas or the Michigan defense, but I think the Showboats are just, talent-wise, they're just so good, and the fact they got the win is huge. Again, basically every rankings has the Roughnecks at 8 and the Stallions at 1. Do you agree with the team MVPs I have? And do you have any suggestions for what I should do for the extra thing next week? Let me know down below. If you enjoyed this, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell. And if you've been a big fan of the channel for a while, think about becoming a channel member. It's as low as $1 a month. You get access to exclusive emojis, exclusive channel badge, and you get 1 exclusive non-UFL video every month. So if you want to support the channel, do that. There's a link in the description, or you can click the join button. And as always, have a great night.